of the No Reading Required book club. This is our summer edition. We are reading Hinds' Feet on High Places. How you doing, Alex?
I'm doing okay. I just want to make sure that we actually have...
we're actually streaming?
That we're... Well, it might take a bit. It's supposed to be streaming.
It says we're live.
It does say we're live.
How did the move go?
I mean, it's still in progress in a lot of ways. Furniture is there, which is good. We're happy about that.
We are very thankful for all the people who came out and helped us move, lift the heavy furniture, pack boxes, all the things that happened to make the move happen. There's still a few tasks at the old place, but we are in our new place with real furniture. We're not sleeping on an air mattress this week. How was it having a bed again?
I mean, yeah, that was kind of nice. And yeah, I have a proper setup for my desk, which is good, so it's a little bit easier for work. Yeah, we have a couch that we can sit on. We have a proper table to eat at, and chairs that we can sit at when we eat at the table. We don't have to move these two chairs from the dining room over to here to stream, and then back to the dining room, and then one goes into the office, and because we were running on two chairs and they were just circulating around the house for a week.
All the little things we settled in.
So yeah, so we're in good position. We're good. We're set up. So yeah, I mean, we have boxes and bins and bags everywhere, but that'll work itself out over the next few months or years or something.
Someday we'll paint this even.
Yes, someday.
Have we made a plan for this?
We had colors set up, and then we took them down so we could get some pictures and things, and we haven't put them back up. But I believe we had picked a nice blue color.
Yep,
we had
we
one
showed
in
it
mind.
last week.
We've marked it with a piece of green painter's tape, so that'll happen. We have some wardrobes we're going to do some painting of.
We're going to take that.
Yeah, we're going to put up some wallpaper on a couple of accent walls just to give some depth and some color and some image to some of the rooms. Yeah, so we've got some design ideas. We're going to be finishing up the last few dredges, remaining boxes, bins of things that are still at the old place are coming over tonight, and we're going to do the sweep and the wash. Yeah, we do the sweep and the wash, and just the last run through tidy up of the space. So we'll be finished. If all goes well, by the end of this week, we will be done with the old department. We can hand off the keys. We'll be permanently in here, and then we can go through the joy over the next few months of sorting, resorting, organizing, making this place our own.
Yeah, we're going from house to home.
Mm-hmm.
One of the silly things that I really want to do with this space is I love naming things. I name my cars, I name plants, and I've always wanted to live in a place like Anne of Green Gables, or Jane of Lantern Hill, Emily of New Moon, or if you go Jane Austen style, like Rosings Cottage, and all those names. So I said, Alex, let's name the house, and you said
Eric.
That's not what I meant. Okay, did you get the reading done this week?
I did. I finished up the last bit last night. No, early this morning. I woke up earlier this morning than I was originally intending to. I just
the cat.
Actually, it wasn't the cat. It was the cat was fine. She actually was leaving us alone. For some reason, I got really hot last night, even with the air conditioning going.
That's funny because I was so cold.
And I woke up with a really dry throat, and so I got up and I decided, since I was basically awake anyway, I was tossing and turning before that, that I would just finish reading. So I did. So I finished my reading at 5:30 this morning or something like that.
I might have finished my reading 45 minutes ago. I had the last chapter to finish today.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we are in chapter 10, The Ascent of the Precipice of Injury.
Yep.
Chapter 11, In the Forest of Danger and Tribulation.
Mm-hmm.
And chapter 12, In the Mist.
Yes.
Yeah, I have some thoughts. Where to begin? Let's begin at chapter 10. I like chapter 10.
Okay.
I've underlined a number of things. Okay, what do you remember of chapter 10? Do you want to start? Do you want me to start? Do you want to walk through it? What happens in chapter 10?
Chapter 10, they are climbing.
the precipice.
Yes, they're climbing these mountains. So the end of chapter 9, if I remember correctly, the end of chapter 9 was they continue their path. They hit the wall of the mountains, and she just collapses in fear.
Yeah.
She sees this wall of mountains. She sees the goats jumping, literally leaping from one rock to another.
Not goats. They're hinds.
But it wasn't a hind. It was...
no, it was a hart and a hind.
A hart and a hind. Okay. Anyways, she sees the two, the hart and the hind, literally leaping from one series of rocks to another, and she considers her feet and legs in the way that they are, that there's no way she can do this, and she just believes that that's the end of her travels, and that's it.
That was last week.
And the shepherd shows up, gives her good advice. She gets help from that. He gives her a cordial, and she starts the climb. And so chapter 10, she's climbing. She's climbing with sorrow and suffering.
And so it starts with, once on track, Much of Fairy discovered to her surprise and thankfulness that it was not nearly so appalling as the actual fact had seemed in anticipation. And that, how many times does that happen? Something seems very daunting, and maybe it is, but that getting started is the hard piece, or though going into the challenge is just even taking that first step. Yep. And then as you're doing it, you find you do have the strength and energy. I've had that happen a few times where something feels too much, and yet on the way. And sometimes you do learn new skills and life things.
I had that happen just yesterday. I had a task at work. I was told that I needed to make a fairly significant change, and my brain went, I'm going to have to. And I started going through all of the different tasks and steps and everything else that I was going to have to do. And then just as I was about to get started on this giant task, I went, oh, wait. We changed that, and actually the process is so much easier. I literally made a 2-line change in a file and tested it, and it worked, and that was it. I finished the work in like 7 minutes instead of taking what I thought was going to be 2 or 3 days.
And the other thing, like spiritually, that happens where you're taken to a new thing. Like this chapter really, I think, lines up with what I was preaching on Sunday of every time you step out, it is a risk. It is a moment of faith. It is into the unknown, and the unknown is just that, unknown. I highlighted this one. Much Afraid was... so last week, part of the whole reason she was hesitant to start or refused to start was Craven Fear was there saying, look at how high that is. Look at that gap. It's going to be impossible. You can't leap that. You're going to fall to the ground. You're going to be crash and burn.
Look at those sharp rocks at the bottom.
You're going to be broken. And so Much Afraid was tremendously relieved to find that that nowhere at all was too difficult. Not even the spot halfway up the cliff, which Craven Fear had so particularly pointed out to her.
Oh, I like the way they described that spot.
Okay, do you want to talk about it?
So there's, from below, she saw this wide crevice that the hart and the hind had leaped across.
Yep.
And she saw that, and there was no way she was going to be able to jump that. It was this wide thing. Well, when she gets there, turns out there's a very narrow walking path, a bridge, probably what we would consider like planks that they would put down in construction to be able to, work on roofing or something like that. So something that is sturdy enough to support you, but isn't a permanent bridge setup. And the comment in the book is, which the hart and the hind gracefully leaped over and did not need, or something along those lines. Yeah. So she's carefully creaking along this thing, and the hart and the hind are just like, we don't need that. We'll just leap across because it's fun.
One thing I liked also was there's the statement of she's learning to be careful to close her imagination altogether to the pictures which Craven Fear has painted. And it's not, this isn't saying don't imagine, don't dream. It's specifically saying when there are images, imagination of the worst case scenario to the point that it is debilitating. She is learning to get past that. There's a phrase I say to my mom sometimes. It's because she'll get worked up about a situation, and she starts already problem solving to a situation that she has perceived could happen, it's one of those things like, Mom, let's not build the bridge until we get to the river. And I think that's yeah. Okay, something really unique happens well, it's not unique. It's happened one other time in this chapter, and I really enjoyed this chapter. So when the shepherd sent her off, he said, you're learning the alphabet of love. Mm-hmm. The first time in the desert with the pyramids, she met a flower that talked to her and said, I am acceptance with joy. That was the A of love. This time she's meeting a new flower, and it was one of those, they found a rest place that the shepherd had warned her, or prepared her that halfway up you'll find a rest place. And in the morning as she looks out, she can't see the green forest they had just come through. She can't see anything, and it's just barren everywhere. Mm-hmm. And as she's looking around, feeling this, like, everything's negative, or everything's barren, everything's isolated, she looks and sees a trickling of water from a waterfall and a single plant. Just 2 or 3 leaves, and it was kind of trapped in the rock and had bursted out of it. The rock still contains, and so she says, what is your name? Do you remember it?
Bearing the Cost.
Bearing the Cost.
Yeah, it made me think of when you pave a driveway or something, and 4 or 5 years later, there's like a line of grass that finds its finds this one crack or crevice in there and just starts growing. You're like, but I paved you, but no, this persistent grass comes through this crack in the pavement. It reminded me of that.
Why are you called that? Once more, with a whispering laugh passing through the leaves, she thought she heard it say, I was separated from all my companions, exiled from home, carried here and imprisoned on the rock. It is not my choice, but the work of others who, when they had brought me here, went away and left me to bear the results of what had been done. That resonated with me, how many times that somebody does something to you and you are the one who is left to bear the results of what they have done. Mm-hmm. You are the one who has to...
Makes me think of Joseph.
Yeah? I have borne and have not fainted. I have not ceased to love. And then goes on to talk about how love helped push through the cracks of the rock until I could see right out into my love, the sun himself. See now, there is nothing whatever between my love and my heart. Nothing around to distract me from him. And then, so this is another altar moment for Much Afraid, where she kneels down and says, my Lord, behold, I am the little handmaiden bearing the cost. So she's learned to acceptance with joy, bearing the cost. Mm-hmm. And she continues on her way.
Yeah. There's actually a number of altar moments in these 3 chapters, I noticed.
There's one in each chapter.
Yeah.
And almost right after that, on the precipice, she injures herself. She's cut up her knees very badly. Mm-hmm. They're not making good time. They need to get to the top because there's no a second rest place for the night. And everything's very slippery. Everything's painful. There was a use of the word giddy in here that I actually underlined, not because I wanted to talk about it. It was just, there are times where this was written in 1955 and language changes, language evolves, and I always think of giddy as like a child on Christmas Day is giddy, and this is used very differently. She was so giddy and faint she could not continue, and she almost slipped over the edge if she was not tied to her companions. And her companions are the ones who remind her in her plight to drink the cordial the shepherd had given her. Mm-hmm. The spirits of grace and comfort gave her strength, and she really struggled after that. And then she was reminded of the bearing the cost, and one of her companions, and I don't remember which one, or I don't remember if it was them or Muster Frey, but they anointed, like, put ointment of this comfort and grace and comfort on her knees so that she could continue.
Yeah.
And the other thing is the flower of bearing, the flower of bearing the cause. Some call it forgiveness. So yeah, after she remembers that, let's try it. That's an excellent suggestion. And I think it came, and then there was singing. Yeah, that ends the first chapter that we're talking about.
Yeah. And I believe the shepherd arrives.
Yes. Okay, so yeah, that's the end. It's the shepherd who sings the song.
Yeah.
They're coming towards them from the clearing, so they make it to the precipice. There's this clearing of trees. Was the shepherd himself.
Yep.
And they're about to enter the forest of danger and tribulation.
That sounds like fun.
Yep. This is the piece where I was saying, like, much afraid. Here's the statement. It seems strange that Much Afraid should remain so like her name, because as soon as the shepherd said the name of the forest, she began to tremble and shake all over, hesitant to go into the forest of danger. And that's that same piece of, anytime God wants us to go into something new, into something scary, into something that He's called us to, it's gonna feel scary.
Yep.
It is still going to, and it does not, I find, it does not matter how many times God has come through in the past, this moment is the present, and you can rely on that to go, oh right, I can trust, but it's still a fresh saying yes of going forward, if that makes sense. And she's reminded that nothing can do you real harm while you are following the path of my will. I had a professor who once said, I'm immortal until God calls me home. He said I'm immortal. The next time he said it, he's like, I'm invincible until God calls me home. I'm like, right, we don't do stupid things. Okay.
Reminds me of that t-shirt, I'm gonna live forever or die trying.
So they get into this forest.
Yeah. And she goes in very hesitantly. There's a moment, as always, when she's called to something new, where she spends some time arguing with the shepherd until the shepherd reminds her that she trusts him and she should continue to do so. And then she, of course, agrees that she trusts him and gets over the argument. And
yes, so this time for the when he had said this, he picked up another stone from the place where she was kneeling and gave it to her to put with the other memorial stones.
Yeah. And then she goes in, and it's completely opposite of anything she worried about, considered, or thought might happen.
And as soon as she's in the forest, her enemies start, resentment's the one who starts saying, why are you going into unnecessary? Everyone else is going this way. There's a few other lines, and then it's, why don't you take the usual path? And I was really thinking about that, is if we want to do unusual things, we have to take unusual paths.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely.
And she limped more painfully whenever she heard the enemies speaking. But she was having a hard time. If she covered her ears, used her hands to cover her ears, then she couldn't hold on to her companions who were helping her from slipping and falling. But if she hold on to their hands, she was still listening till one of them pulled out a first aid kit and they put cotton in her ears.
Yes, a very sensible thing to do.
A storm was coming. They stayed a few days in a cabin.
Mm-hmm. There was a thing that they said in there which I thought was really interesting, which was they're staying in a cabin, which the cabin is dry, sealed, and freshly stocked. Well stocked. So it's got It's got firewood. It's got a fireplace. It's got
food.
Tins of food and unleavened bread. And so they make themselves a fire. They dry out their clothes. They eat. And when the storm breaks for a short period of time, because the storm just seems to circle and circle and circle, so it
for
leaves
3 or
them.
4 days.
Yeah, it leaves them, comes back around, hits them again, and each time it hits them again, it's a little bit stronger. And every time there's a break, they go out, they collect fallen branches, and they dry it in the oven in order to provide firewood for the next person who needs the cottage.
Yeah,
which I thought was quite neat.
The chapter ends with a very interesting situation with Sorrow. Sorrow was singing, and Much Afraid's like, I didn't know you could sing, and she's like, I didn't either until I started singing the song. Her exact words is, neither did I. But on the way up here through the forest, I found the words and tunes coming to my head just as I was singing now. And there's a friendship really blossoming between Suffering and Sorrow and Much Afraid in all over, well, since the beginning to now. She's gone from very afraid of them and rejecting their help. Suffering and Sorrow can definitely be a way that God teaches us. I'm trying to understand what the implication is, because we're not to go running after like sorrows.
No,
they are a part of life, and they can be the thing that happens to give us insight to them. Like, yeah, I can't quite word this one, but I'm just trying to figure out what was the initial intent.
Just 1 second.
The cat's trying to eat the cables.
The cat is very interested in all of the cables.
So yeah, I think like we don't want to go seeking suffering. That I don't think that's the implied meaning.
Okay, I don't know if I have to kick the cat out or if I have to keep her on my lap.
I think kick the cat. Keep the cat out.
Keep the cat out.
Keep the cat out. I don't know. Okay.
Let's try this. Okay.
And the song that was singing was about how lovely and nimble thy feet are, O prince's daughter. Last line is, can overtake thee, nor can... Okay. On all the mountains there is no gazelle, no roe, no hind that can overtake thee, nor can leap as well. And Much Afraid is encouraged by this, that someday that will be her. Into the Mist. It's called In the Mist.
Yes.
I think the mist is where most of us live. Where we feel... Anyway. The mist represents the day-to-day. That... when we first come to faith, there is a lot of rapid growth. When God is doing something very transformational in us, there is these leaps and bounds of growth. If we're at something that is really encouraging and remind us, like a waypoint, the cabin was that. In the midst of all these things, things are happening. It's exciting. Yeah. It's ups and downs, but there's consistency. And now, the journey becomes... here are 3 words that they use in this chapter to describe the trail right now. Duller, plodding, trudge forward day after day, able to see nothing except white.
Yep. Yeah, and at one point, it's a little bit later on, but at one point, because of the torrential rains, which creates slick, muddy conditions, because of the constant trudging on the same paths and the ups and downs, at one point, Much Afraid describes her continued progress as slithering.
Yeah. Because she would fall, get back up, like she's covered in mud. At last she bursts out impatiently. Will this dull, dreary mist never lift, I wonder? And would you believe it? A voice she knew too well immediately responded. So this is the first time since the storm started in the last chapter that her enemies are speaking again. Resentment says, no, you won't. And then Resentment points out that, have you not noticed? Your trail has leveled up. You're not going upward. Sometimes you're even going down. What if you've taken the wrong path? Like, so here are the questions, like, you're going down. The shepherds lied to you. You're going down. You're coming away from the mountain. That's the first one. The second one is, no, you've missed the path. You're on the wrong path. And
there's a third one, which is you're just going in circles.
Yeah.
You're not advancing anywhere. You're just on the same path forever. You're just going in circles.
And Much Afraid really begins to believe. Oh, don't you think that we might have missed the way? The shepherd said the path led upward. And as you see, this one doesn't. And her companions are like, nope, we're staying on the path.
Because they're good companions.
And then Bitter's, you must be at least willing to go back and look. And they're like, nope. If we're going around in circles, we'll come back to the place we missed the trail. We're going forward. And so Pity's like, oh, you poor little thing. And she found in her heart responding to them almost against her will. It made her very disagreeable and difficult to deal with. Mm-hmm. There was a solution.
Yes, there was. It was an interesting solution. And I think it's something that we do, like, you, not just you and I, but we as believers, as Christians do, which is she starts singing.
And I don't think that's unique to us. Like, I saw on Facebook the other day, are you feeling down? Like, it was kind of like, if you're feeling this, have a shower. If you're feeling this, eat a snack. If you're feeling this, put music that makes you happy on. There's something about singing.
But she's effectively singing worship music.
Yep.
And it drives away the enemies.
She can't hear them anymore. And as she's singing, the shepherd comes up and says, I don't know that song. And so they begin to talk. And the shepherd adds a song. Adds to the song. And then they have a wonderful conversation. There are parts of this conversation that are really, I think, were really great. The end of the conversation, I don't have issue. Yes, no. I have trouble with the end of the chapter.
Oh, yes?
Yeah. There were things that made me go,
Remind me on that one, because I'm not sure if I fully remember how it happened.
Okay, so things I've underlined. The first one is the shepherd saying, I never think of you how you are now, but how you will be when you're brought to the kingdom.
Right.
And I liked that, but I think I prefer the Max Lucado illustration of God loves you right where you are, but he loves you enough not to let you stay there.
Yeah.
There's just a slightly different nuance in that. And I think some of it is when you're on the journey and you hear people talking about, oh, I'm giving my utmost for his highest, which is a great book, devotional book, but there are times where that person has come to a place of surrender and it's living it out, but when they're telling you back, it sounds like you need to strive to impress God, or God's not going to fully love you until you are this, or if I don't give my best, then I'm failing.
Right.
Like, I think there's a piece in there that I'm pushing back against. Yes. And then this was the other one. Did you really think I would let you stray from the right path to the high places without doing anything to warn you or prevent it? So I like that. Like, if your desire is to be on this faith journey, oh, poor cat outside the door. If your desire is to be on this faith journey, there will be times where we hear the message wrong, or we step off, or whatever that looks like. If you're continually seeking God's will, he's not going to let you stay off that path for long.
Yeah.
Like, he's going to call you back. He's going to show up.
I remember there is a part of that conversation that I didn't like.
Okay, so that's the part that we're getting to right now. Do you remember what it was?
I'm pretty sure. If I want to know if we're on the same page here.
Okay, so the first one is, do you love me enough to know that I'm not going to deceive you?
Yeah. And
she's there. Yes, I know you're not lying to me. I believe you. Even if the whole world tells me I'm crazy, I will trust you, and in your goodness, I will trust that you don't lie. That's not exactly. So the shepherd says, would you willingly trust me, even if everything in the world seems to say that I'm deceiving you? Indeed, that I have deceived you all along. Why, yes, I'm sure I would. Because one thing I know to be true, it is impossible that you should tell a lie. It is impossible that you should deceive me. I know that I am often very frightened at things which you ask me to do, but I could never doubt you in that way. It's myself I'm afraid, never of you, and though everyone in the world should tell me that you have deceived me, I should know it was impossible. And I would like the chapter to end right there.
But no.
No.
The author continues.
Yeah, there's another page, and this is where I'm like, you kinda got off the rails for me. So do you know what the shepherd says?
And what if I am deceiving you?
Much afraid. Yeah, that's exactly it. Much afraid. Supposedly I really did deceive you. What then? It was then she turned to be quiet, and she thinks of her life before knowing the shepherd. She thinks of what the shepherd has done for her. She's in all of these places and says, my lord, if you can deceive me, you may. It can make no difference. I must love you as long as I continue to exist. I cannot live without you. I love her willingness, but I hate the whole idea that if I can, I may deceive her. That line in there, it just... Ooh. Mm-hmm. And he turned and went away, much afraid, picked up a little ice-cold pebble, which was laying on the ground where he stood, put it in her bag, and then tremblingly rejoined sorrow and suffering, and they continued on their journey.
Yeah. There is... Yeah, that...
I had totally forgotten that. I do not like that.
Yeah. That was a part that I didn't like. There was one part of that chapter that we didn't talk about, which I thought was really interesting.
Okay.
Because at one point...
I'm too riled up to go back, but yes, please tell us.
At one point, Much Afraid is sitting down with the shepherd, and they're just talking. And I think this is when they're talking about her singing. And Sorrow and Suffering are in a different area, a little ways away, and they're having their own conversation. And in the middle of the conversation, Much Afraid notices that they're laughing. The two of them are having a very joyful conversation, and they bring down their hoods.
They're facing with their backs to Much Afraid, but she notices that they have pulled back their veils, because that's something that we sometimes forget. I forget in the thing is these women are wearing veils over their faces.
Yeah, and they've pulled them back to have this conversation, and yeah, so she's caught up in this. Like as she's having the conversation with the shepherd, she's looking over to look at them and to kind of like pay attention to what's going on in their conversation and everything else. And at one point, while Sorrow and Suffering are chatting, they start laughing, and the shepherd starts laughing with them. Yeah,
and that's when they put their veil back down and like.
Yeah.
In that sitting and looking at Sorrow and Suffering, she even thinks that they look more regal, they stand taller. So we can recognize that Much Afraid is going on this journey, mm-hmm. and is changing and being transformed, is developing Hinds' feet. I have a question. Do we think Sorrow and Suffering are being transformed as well, or is it just Much Afraid's perception of sorrow and suffering?
I'm not sure, but at one point the shepherd asks her, how do you feel about your companions now? And Much Afraid says that she's very surprised to find that they bring her joy and peace, or something along those lines, which are the companions that she originally wanted.
Yeah.
And that she believes that they are helping her not because the shepherd asked them to, but because they want to.
And they want her to reach the top. They want
her to succeed. That they in their own free will are trying to make sure to the best of their ability that she can succeed, which I find really interesting.
Yeah, and that's the piece that I'm really struggling with. We don't seek out sorrow and suffering, but it is a piece of life. What is the author trying to say about sorrow and suffering along the journey? Because it's never going to be, well, I want to sit down in grief, or I want to sit, but they can be, there's some, I like watching the companions, but there are times where I'm like, what is the intent? How is this allegory playing out, and have we hit a place where it's limited? And the author, I think, was very lonely in her life at times. So she grew up in England, from what I've got to read her bio again, but I know she was a missionary in Palestine before that region got renamed and other things. But she would have been a single woman, from what I understand, living alone, learning a new language, learning a new culture, and just trying to be faithful. And in that, I could see that loneliness, the grief and suffering of being an outsider, and finding contentment in the life that she was living faithfully because she had said yes. I'm wondering how much of that is being paralleled in what are we doing with suffering and sorrow, and what is their companionship to me. And in every situation, is it exactly suffering and sorrow that is helping her? Are they being transformed? That's where that question comes from, because Sorrow didn't know she could sing until the song welled up in her. Looks like growth, that these two companions are more than just their name.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to...
I think they're becoming good friends.
But...
Which is an interesting concept, that we would become friends with sorrow and suffering.
Yeah, and that's the place that I'm having a trouble. We're not supposed to be masochists seeking out pain and suffering. So what is being said?
But yet martyrs exist.
Right, but you still don't seek it out.
No, you don't seek it out, but you certainly do find peace with it if it's being heaped upon you because of the choices you make. You either break from it or you find peace in it.
Right. That's not the piece that I'm struggling with right now.
Okay.
In the allegory I think there are places where allegories like this fall apart, and I think that's the transition that's bothering my brain. I know when we're through a piece of suffering, a type of suffering, we have a lot more grace and love and compassion for somebody who is now into that situation.
Right.
I've been through sorrow and suffering, and I now want to help someone else. So there is that growth that comes out of it.
Yeah.
And sorrow and suffering is a part of life. Jesus doesn't keep us from sorrow and suffering, but helps us go through it. And I think that's the best place to leave it, but I do not like the end of chapter 12. I'm actually having a lot of issues with that. I don't know the intent of it, and I don't... It feels like it's putting a layer of doubt unintentionally.
Right.
Yeah. I'm interested to see if that thread gets pulled in for the rest of the story, because I don't remember that. I remember, it's interesting, up until loneliness, I remembered all of that.
Okay.
I didn't remember the forest. I remembered all of her first sacrifices. I forgot the pyramids thing, but I remember the precipice. I remember the cabin. But there are other details I'm like, did I just skip that chapter accidentally? I remember Craven Fear coming out and some of these other things, but there's other times that I'm like, I feel like I'm reading this for the first time. How did I forget this? Okay. We are halfway through the book. We are halfway through.
Awesome.
This coming week, we are reading chapter 13, 14, and 15.
Okay.
The Valley of Loss. The Place of Anointing. The Floods. 13, 14, 15 is what's coming up.
Okay. I thought we were doing 13, 14, and then 15, 16 separate.
Okay, we're doing 13, 14, 15. And then we're doing 16, 17, 18. And our last week, we're doing 19, 20.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So, and I actually think that's really good because chapter 17 starts part 2. And if chapter 16 is how I think it ends, you really do need to end on a more positive note.
Okay. Good to know.
Yeah, so Place of Anointing, the Floods, no, Valley of Loss, Place of Anointing, the Floods. That's what we're going to be reading this coming week.
Excellent. That's wonderful. So we'll be back next Tuesday at noon.
Yep.
To chat about those 3 chapters and to potentially drink iced tea or maybe lemonade or something else.
Or something else.
Yeah. Excellent.
Thank you for joining us. We will see you next time. Bye, friends.